You guys are homeschooling them. That makes sense. And the idea that you would plan to return, I guess, kind of answers the question as a whole for how you still view this place, even if things are messier than they have been in a while and, are a little rowdy here.
It's important to understand. Yeah, it's important to understand that we are Americans and all Americans have advantages. The question is, do you think that your advantage being an American is better in the United States, or do you think your advantage being American is better somewhere else? Do you think your currency goes further somewhere else? Do you think your healthcare would be better somewhere else? Do you think that you would have better experiences somewhere else? Do you think education for your children might be better somewhere else? And if so, we have the right and the freedom to travel, whereas many countries don't give their citizens that freedom.
Do you worry about going to countries that aren't on your list of like countries I can't go to and not realizing that it is a country that should be on your list of countries you can't go to?
Sort of. I'm not the kind of target that most intelligence services want right now. I don't have any gravity. It doesn't make any sense to seize me. So if I went to Armenia, it doesn't make sense for the Russians to come to Armenia just to take me. It doesn't make sense for the Armenian government to take me and pass me over to the Russians. There's no pawn. There's no value there.
Wait a minute. I don't know if I buy that.
Okay.
Here's why. And you can shoot this down, but I want to throw this by you. In this book, you outline what you and your wife, and your wife's going with you as well, so you guys are like a tag team.
Right.
What you and your wife were able to come up with that is now used around CIA widely and has probably been expanded upon. Number two, you also have insight into, without saying the name of the country, a very dangerous place with a high GDP that other countries would be interested in. Number three, let's call it what it is. You've run a business for the last 7-8 years, whatever it is, where your job is to get clientele at the high C-suites of Fortune 500 companies that are multinational organizations that have all kinds of patents or information or things that people like you who know how to snoop around have access to, that if I were a foreign intelligence service of any country, but particularly powerful country, I'd be very interested in what this Alex Hernandez guy has to say about things. That was your name undercover. But like, do you not see that as a possibility that you might have more value than you are putting on yourself?
No, I understand the value that I have. What I'm saying is I don't believe that I meet the warrant for seizing. I don't think for a second that I'd live in Armenia and not be surrounded by Russian friends who want to talk about my background. But I don't think that anybody would seize me, take me, apprehend me out of a third country and then take me to their home country, and then in some way, shape, or form seriously affect my life.
I was reading an article 2 weeks ago on a totally separate story that had nothing to do with it, where they were talking high level about espionage and the dangers of it. And one of the things that was mentioned in there was how in 2011, 2012, I want to say, check me in the comments on that, you can probably Google this, there was like 10 to 12 people working for CIA who were executed in China, right? So blatantly executed. It's talked about in news stories. My ass read it somewhere or whatever. And, I don't remember ever hearing that at the time. I don't remember hearing that a few years after it. This was like a side mention. Wasn't even on Wikipedia or something like that. I'm sure I could find it there if I really went and looked. But like, Joe found it there. 2010 to 2012 killing of CIA sources in China. This wasn't like a major thing, though.
Right.
So, this is just one world power of many. But like, we've seen what Russia does on UK soil on fucking security cameras, dumping polonium on guys or whatever. Like, there are places that are, as you've talked about before, brazen. I'm not saying they would do this to you. I'm not saying you're wrong and that maybe it's not worth it. But like, what if it is? There has to be a percentage possibility there. Maybe it's not high, but, maybe there's a 1% chance that like, I'm going to go to fucking Georgia, the country, and get murked. Yeah.
There's always a possibility. And what we have to do, all of us have to do, is decide what actions we take based on the possibilities versus the probabilities. It's worth noting, right, that with this example specifically, those sources that were killed have never been reported to be CIA officers. They've never been reported to be American citizens.
They could have been sources, meaning like people on the ground.
I don't even think could it. Well, I mean, if this is a real demonstrable thing, which I'm not allowed to talk about one way or the other, right? Because it's CIA specific. But a source in common vernacular in the espionage world, a source is usually a national of that target country. So this means however many Chinese people were killed. And those Chinese people were committing, according to the Chinese government, espionage, which is punishable by death.
Yeah, this said, and again, you can't comment on this, so I'm just going to say this part here just for semantics. This says casualties 30 to plus killed or captured, and then it talks about specifically 18 to 20 sources were killed. Now, casualties includes people that aren't killed and people that are
hurt, right?
But, what I was reading was they talked about 10 to 12 people working for CIA who were killed, and the way that it was, I'm going to go back and look at that afterwards. I'll find that article. The way it was stated, my mind did not go to sources, whereas the full number here, 30 plus, this would absolutely, there's no way there were 30 case officers killed in China in a 2-year period. That's like, there's no way that happened. But like this would absolutely include what you're talking about, which is that there's a high proportion of it where it is just people on the ground who,
This is the same thing that's happening in Iran right now. Right?
In Iran.
After what happened when Mossad launched drones from within the Iranian border and they neutralized leadership and the United States flew in with stealth bombers, in Iran, Iran's on a hunt right now for Iranians who they believe are sources of information for Mossad. Mm-hmm. And I think if you look in the last 45 days, you're going to find dozens, if not more, that were at least arrested and possibly executed.
Probably all headed that way, for sure.
All headed that way, yeah. But I mean, what are they actually letting the headlines know? What are they sharing right now? I don't know.
Yeah, those guys are probably missing some fucking fingernails and teeth.
But the whole thing is a game. Espionage is a game. And it's a game of how much value do you have and how much value do you not have? Are you valuable now or later? Are you increasing or decreasing in value? What's your strategy? What's your move? And for someone like me, who's been out, who does not have access to current secrets, I have historical knowledge only. Is it worth creating an international incident over me? If I fly my dumbass to Ukraine to go speak to the Ukrainian government, then I'm a fucking idiot.
Yeah, that might be a problem.
If I take a trip to Taiwan and I decide to just go be a tourist in Taiwan and go visit like the anti-China shrine, yeah, that's a dumbass move, right?
Let's bring a free Hong Kong sign there too.
Like these are certain things. Go Uyghurs, right? there are some very bad ideas that would be worth an international incident, right? Because now Russia can say that they arrested a CIA officer in Ukraine, and China can say they arrested a CIA officer, with anti-Chinese sentiments in Taiwan. Those things make sense. But if I go to Hungary, does it make sense for Russia to pull me from Hungary, even though those two get along? What's the claim? A former CIA officer touring Hungary, now we have him in Russia? No, it doesn't make any sense. And it's going to piss off the United States because it's a huge violation of American citizenship.
We actually have Pat in here right now, and I might ask you this just because you were talking to, I see you nodding over there. You're talking about this just before. There's a new book that came out about Evan Gershkovich. Is that right?
Yeah. The Wall
Can you just
Street
give context here?
Yeah. So a book came out. It's called Swap. And it's basically the Evan Gershkovich story, the Wall Street Journal reporter. And it's interesting to hear you talk about this because they talk about how it's all intertwined with like Paul Whelan and Brittany Griner and kind of how the Cold War era, spy swaps sort of emerged now, and how because the U.S. changed their policy from not negotiating to now negotiating for people, Putin was like, okay, well, let's do it. And so it's interesting to hear you discuss this because, for example, Brittany Griner, when Brittany Griner got locked up, there was another guy, Paul Whelan, who was also locked up at the same time. And Biden got a lot of flack because, Brittany Griner was an athlete and Paul Whelan, was some white dude that was a former Marine. And Brittany Griner got out like that. And Biden took a lot of heat for that. But the reason why, and this is relevant to what you were talking about, is that Putin and the Russians said, that guy is a spy. So only if you give us a spy will we let him go.
Yeah.
But they let Brittany Griner go for Maria Butina, and that was a quick swap. And
Wasn't that Victor Boot?
Well, I think Victor Boot was who they let go for Paul Whelan, I believe. Or maybe it was Victor Boot. Oh, no, the Kenyan.
I think it was the other way around.
Yeah. So they gave up somebody for Brittany Griner, but they forced Paul to confess to being a spy, even though he wasn't in Russia. And then in return, Biden, everybody was like, oh, he's a white guy. You know, that's why they're not giving him up. That's why Brittany Griner got the attention because Biden's a Democrat, when in reality, Putin, I mean, Russia gets a say too. And they wanted a spy in return. So I'm curious from your perspective, like, you know, you don't think that you could kind of fall into the same sort of thing where it's like that, you know, they require a spy. It's like, well, we got a spy now. It's just, it's pieces, right? It's leverage.
Correct. But you got to keep in mind, was Paul Whelan apprehended in Russia?
Yes. Oh, that's
the big difference.
Yeah.
That's the big difference. Is it worth creating an international incident to reach into another third country, especially a country that might be NATO or a country that might be neutral or something else, right? To seize what you need. If it's a true CIA officer, right? For example, in Shadow Cell, the operational structure that we developed, which is why Putin is doing what he's doing now, the operational structure we developed was a cleansing route. Meaning we're going to operate in one place, but we're going to actually live in a different place. And then when we travel between where we live and where we operate, we go through a third place. Mm-hmm. We do the doc swap in the third place. We change alias in the third place. We make all references of travel one or the other, binary. So either it's travel to and from our place of living or it's travel to and from our place of operating, so that no matter who reverse engineers us, they never see a connection between all three spaces.
Right.
When you've built that kind of operation, 100% it becomes worth it to palladium poison somebody in the third location, because you have no legal grounds to stand on. You have no way of dodging the international incident if you apprehend them from a third country. You're basically doing what we did to Osama bin Laden. You're invading Pakistan, an ally.
Well, they got some explaining to do.
But they got in trouble for that, so you're right. So you're invading a third country to apprehend a threat that's a threat to you, but not a threat to that country, and then you have to explain it on the back end. Mm-hmm. When you have your operational outcome completed, when bin Laden's dead, who cares? Now you're like, Pakistan, we're sorry. We'll spend the next 2 years saying we're sorry, and here's a little bit of extra aid, and here's a little bit of this, and here's a little bit of that, and here's some favorable trading agreements, and you're good. But when it's something where you're caught in the act, it's a whole different ballgame.
Yeah, it's also like the bin Laden one's kind of an extreme example.
It is.
Fucking Osama bin Laden, you know.
Right, which matters to us.
He was living next to, maybe I'm misremembering this, tell me if I am, but he was literally living within like eyesight of their military base that's like our equivalent of fucking Fort Bragg.
Yes. I've heard the same thing.
Like, they knew he was there.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, there it is. Osama bin Laden was living in a large compound in Abbottabad, Pakistan, less than a mile from the Pakistan Military Academy, West Point.
So if you're going to go into a third country to carry out an operational objective, you better have a really good reason, because you know you're going to have to defend it afterwards.
That was the very first clip I ever made of you. That was the first one that went, where you were talking about you be in a third country so that you can go into a second country to get into the main country.
And you can clean the route the whole way, man.
Yeah.
It's just so much fun to me. Espionage is so much fun to me because it's real world chess. And you know that they're going to find you, and you know they're going to backtrack you, and you know that they're going to look all the way back through the flight records. They're going to find you. They're going to find you in fucking, you name it. Let's say that you're American, living in Canada, targeting Russia, traveling through whatever, Sweden. They're going to find you going back to Sweden. They're going to see that it's a dead end. They're going to know it's operational. But there's nothing they can do about it.
Mm. What happened in that last mission at the farm? Because like you said, you were saying this a while ago, but you went through the entire thing. Every part of CIA training, surveillance, detection, regular surveillance, going into a city, doing all the stories you've told in the past. And then something happened on the last one that then eventually led to someone on the board not liking you and stopping you from being a full case officer. Yeah.
So in one of the final exercises, you have what's known as a multi-meeting exercise where you develop the full life cycle of a target source. Mm-hmm. So whereas other exercises are different lifespans, or they're like segments of the lifespan of an asset development case, this one was a full lifespan, so from beginning to end. And shortly, like right towards the end of the actual developmental cycle, you're supposed to learn how to pitch and recruit and start setting up clandestine meetings with a target. And clandestine meetings are different than public meetings, and there's all sorts of tradecraft stuff in there that we can talk about. But in that meeting, in that session, I let my target take control of when and how we would meet, which is a clear violation of who's in control of the relationship. But at the time, I was so excited because I thought I was like nailing it. Just like anybody who's ever been excited because they thought they were doing a good job and then they fucked up at the end. I thought I was doing a good job. And then as we were kind of agreeing to the terms of our relationship, I let him take control of when and where we were going to meet next. Because he's not a real asset, he's a role player. As a role player, he could take that back to the other role players and say, my guy fucked up. Here's what he did wrong. And then to teach me the mistake that I made, they set up an apprehension and an interrogation for me. So when I went to the next meeting, I was essentially arrested in character, and then I was interrogated in character by my own teachers, by my own staff.
It's kind of strange to think about. I don't know, this one was different than other stories, like when they literally drop you in a city and yes, there are role players, but you're running from them, and so you literally really have to steal things out of real stores. Like it's real.
Right.
Whereas this one, the person is a trainer who has to put on an Academy Award-winning performance to make this real enough for you to feel like you're actually playing the psychological game. Like, it's a very strange thing.
It's a strange thing, but you also have to remember that we live in a false reality the whole time we're at the farm. We have no access to the outside world. The outside world has no access to us. The only time we exist in the outside world is when we get a pass to leave the base where the farm is held, or when we literally carry out an exercise outside of the borders of that base, when we go into a downtown city area to meet somebody in a coffee shop. But it's not like we're going to have a conversation with the barista or meet somebody new on the walk, because we're running a surveillance detection route the whole way there. We're running a surveillance detection route the whole way back. So we're never leaving our bubble of reality. So it's the weirdest thing to admit to. When you go into a contrived space for about 14 days, you're kind of chuckling under your breath like, oh, this is so cheesy. Like, look at the bad tape player news broadcast that they're playing, and they've played that same news broadcast for the last 20 years, and look at how cheesy it is. And here's like the 5th time that we're reading a newspaper that's just printed out of the printer in the office, and all these fake incoming sources of information, and you're like, oh, this is kind of like cheesy. For about 14 days, that shit's cheesy.
For 14 days? It's about 14 seconds when you took us in that fucking warehouse. That was never cheesy.
Because you start to adapt to the reality that you're in. So after 14 days of, you eat at the cafeteria, you do this, you do that, whatever else, you've still got months of training ahead of you. So by the time you're 4 months in, the fucking newspaper is the printout from the office.
I see what you're saying.
And the bad tracking that's happening on the tape player is the real news story from today. And it's all anybody talks about. And everything that you're doing inside your station, inside your studio, inside your peer group, it's all so real. So when an instructor pulls you into a classroom to interrogate you, it's fucking real. It is so strange, man. But you've had the experience now to know, like, you knew you weren't going to get hurt. Back in the back of your brain, but in the front of your brain, you started convincing yourself of something very different.
Oh, there were a few times where I was like, not sure what we signed up for here. I didn't know they were coming up. We'll talk about it later. I don't want to get into this now. But for example, when they were coming over to check the pulse on the fingers, which, I didn't know that was like a thing. I thought Trevor was about to break my fingers. And I was like, oh, fuck, I need those. No, wait a minute. I was almost like, cut, but I couldn't do that because you're so disoriented. Maybe that's different, like when you're being kidnapped right away or whatever, but now that you explain it, I'm almost surprised it would take 14 days just to kind of get yourself immersed, believing that atmosphere, because the human mind, to your point, does adapt quickly to surroundings.
It's about how it's resourced, right? When you are well-resourced, and we were all very well-resourced. Remember, we were going into multiple months of training, and in those multiple months of training, we're exhausted by the end, and we're cracking by like the last 30 to 45 days, but they need us to make it through hundreds of days of training. So we come in well-resourced, and for the first few months, you stay well-resourced. You get full nights of rest, you get really good meals, you get, you're taught academically something in a classroom that you can adapt to, you can take on, you can practice. So you're kind of like walking, or you're, what's it called, crawling, before you can walk, so that you have enough energy barely to run at the end.
Right.
That's why for 14 days we were fine, because we were well-resourced. We knew enough. We could still remember what happened 5 days ago. We still knew that there was a new movie coming out. By month 4, you have no fucking idea what the new movies are that are coming out. You don't even know that there are movies out, because there are no movies that get advertised on the internal CCTV.
And how was it? 4 months total?
It's many months. It's a classified number.
Classified number.
It's a classified number, so I can't share it, but there's all sorts of easy Google searches you can do that will tell you what's popular.
It's so funny that like people at home can now go Google that, but you just can't say it right
Well, what I love is that I promise you CIA is going to be watching this. They're going to watch all the promo stuff for the book.
Yeah.
And they're going to literally hear you say, like you said earlier, I've been talking to you for a long time and you've never explained these details. Like, fucking there you go, CIA. I told you I wasn't doing it.
I was paid to say that. I just want to point that out. Gave me $1,200 and I accepted.
There's the bus.
And I work for Russia. Just kidding. Don't ever
air that.
Don't air that too far, because that'll be taken out of context real fast. But either way.
For Russia.
So you got in, when you get to this last one, you've been immersed into it for however fucking long you were. And you describe it. You were feeling really good about yourself. You felt like, I'm in control. This guy's doing exactly what I want. And then, the air gets sucked out because, like you said, they end up abducting you and taking you back for interrogation. And it was like, you describe it in a way in your book that's almost like, you're like, fuck, like just got the wind knocked out of you. And there's nothing else after this. Were you thinking to yourself at the end of that interrogation, like, oh my God, they're not going to let me be a case officer now?
There was a big piece of me that was thinking that. As time passed, as like hours turned to days, that became the stronger thought. But if the closest thing I can compare it to is anybody who's ever been on the cusp in college between making it or not making it to the next year, passing or not passing a class, and you're like, did I get that C minus, or did I get that B plus? Did I hit the score that I needed, or am I fucked? That's really what it felt like. I was like, okay, I fucked up. I know I fucked up. I know this is bad, but is this like D minus bad, or is this like C plus bad? How bad is this? Because I don't know, because it's all subjective to the fucking the instructors. And I know that if enough instructors like me, they're going to make it more C plus. And if enough instructors don't like me, they're going to make it fucking D minus, right? So I don't know where I land right now on this pivotal, massive exercise that was worth the majority of my, of my college grade, if you will. So it's super, super parallel to what we've all experienced in college. And that's where I sat. Like, am I about to graduate, or do I have to do summer school? Except there is no summer school. So am I about to graduate, or am I about to spend the rest of my life without a degree?
Where is Jihi in the program during all this? She became a targeter. So what's her track?
She aced everything. Yeah, Jihi was a superstar, and she's smart enough not to appear on the internet very often. That's how smart she is, right? So, case officer training is probably 4 times longer than any other training that happens at the agency. Longer than analyst training, linguist training, staff operations training, tech training, anything. Because there's so much of it that goes into keeping you secure, keeping your assets secure, keeping the information secure, and then how to operate in different environments. So Jihi went through her training course months before, or she started her training course while I was still at the farm and finished months before I was done.
But you guys came in at the same time. Okay.
We started
it's just a totally different track.
Correct. Totally different parallel
track. What's she
track.
under again?
She's a targeter.
Yeah, but is that under another subcategory, or is it literally a category just called targeting?
Targeting, exactly. So under the National Clandestine Service, which is now known as the Director of Operations, you have multiple title tracks underneath there. There's special skills officers. Those are kind of your paramilitary guys, as well as some other various special skills like doctors. Then you have your targeters. You have your mission planners, which are called staff operations officers. You have your tech ops officers. You have your logistics officers. You have your budget and finance officers. You have your targeting officers. So all of them fall under the clandestine services, and they all have their own different training tracks underneath, with the idea being that once you kind of finish your training track, you're able to all play nicely together in the real world. But like what a budget and finance officer does in the real world is completely different than what a targeter does in the real world.
Of course. So you're under you were at the farm to be under the case officer part, and then they come out to you at the end and say, board didn't pass you.
Yep.
So
you go back, like it's the walk of shame, dude. It's a horrible feeling because everybody else there is passing. By the time you get to the end, The real riffraff get cut about halfway through. The people who really can't keep up get cut at what's called the first round of murder boards halfway through. So the second half, everybody's close, everybody's friends, everybody can do the tasks. It's just whether or not you meet the subjective desire of people wanting to work with you. And just like you said, like, I'm kind of a dick. People don't want to work with me. So I'm not surprised I got cut at the end in hindsight. But at the time, I thought I was pretty shit hot. So I get cut, and it's the walk of shame. I call Jihi, and I tell her what happened, and she's like, I can't believe that happened. In my group, in my classroom, only one other person got cut out of the, say, 25 of us that were there. And he was so devastated, he just walked into the woods and didn't come back. He took a bottle of scotch and a fat cigar and walked into the woods.
Like at the farm?
At the farm. And the fucking security people had to go find him after he didn't show up for like the rest of that day or the next morning's check-in or anything. And he wasn't in his hotel room because we all live in like this mock hotel room. He just walked off the fucking campus and then was deemed like, what's the word I'm looking for?
Psychologically unfit?
Unfit for retention.
Yeah.
I don't think they use the word psychologically, but unfit for retention. So they took him out of the NCS and they were like, hey, would you rather do something else in the agency? Like, would you rather make fake passports or be a courier or something like that? And he was like, I'm fucking done with this. And he left. And he went and created an incredible life for himself as like he goes back and forth between Miami and Paris, putting together these badass nightclub parties. And
So he works for fucking Diddy. You're telling me this was a CIA operation?
I feel like he made a better choice than I did because he's been making a lot more money for a much longer time.
I wish we had that on camera. Wow. Yeah. Gio was a little shocked by that one. I do. All right. That's a rabbit hole. I feel like that was staged. I feel like he walked off into the woods. So they're like, oh, Jimmy's crazy. And they go in. They're like, son, you ready to work for the real agency now? And it's Diddy like, yeah, get over here, boy.
Back in the day.
Yeah.
Back in 2007.
Oh, you boy.
That's
you
so funny.
Miami to Paris. Wow. Okay. So did it all, after they say no to you and you walk back to the hotel or whatever, was there, I don't know, it was tough to tell what was like 30,000 in the air, feet in the air, you writing it now, thinking about it versus what you were thinking in the moment. Were you immediately thinking those things to yourself? Like, I'm my own worst enemy. I got in my own way. My dick got too big, and that's why this happened.
No, just like most of us don't think that when we fuck up.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
I'm thinking this place is so unfair. I've got to escape the shame. I'm not gonna like. We all get bussed in, and we all get bussed out. Like it's a fucking summer camp, right? And when we get bussed out, there's no fucking way I'm gonna sit on a bus with hundreds of other people who have all passed. And they're all going to be talking about their next assignment and their first assignment. And they're all going to be making plans to talk to their assignment officers and the office that they're going back to. And I don't have any of that shit because I'm going back into a bucket of people where the question is, do we even retain these people? That's where I'm going back to. I'm going back to check into an HR office under an HR officer who's going to be like, we're going to see if we can find a place for you to land, right? What the fuck? And in my mind, I'm like, I finished all of the training. I've been through the hardest thing you guys can throw at me. And it was just whether or not 7 fucking old men, all of which were men, 7 old men chose whether or not to keep me on as a case officer, certify me as a case officer, or not certify me as a case officer. And you're telling me that because one of them voted on the wrong side, that I'm not only not a case officer, but I'm not even useful, not even worth keeping? Like, it was a horrible feeling. So all I was like is I got to get the fuck away from this, and I'm on my own. I got to get away from this. I can't trust these people. If this is how the whole system works, I can't trust this place. I got to find a way to make my own life. But I'm in this serious relationship with Jihi, who's a fucking rock star. And when I come back, she understands the system. She understands the process. She understands how flawed it is. I take this long kind of minute to not go back to CIA. They're smart enough to grant us an extended leave after we finish the farm. They give us 60 days off. And they're like, you have 60 days off to kind of prepare yourself for your next assignment or to, get over your fucking hissy fit when you don't make it. And that's exactly what I did for my 60 days. And Jihi was just there with me every step of the way, supporting me one way or the other. And I just, at the end of those 60 days, I was like, if I do anything else, If I go work for Booz Allen Hamilton, if I go be a barista, if I go do something else, I'm going away from Jihi. So I might as well go sit in that little pool at the HR office and see what shit job I get.
So we're going to explain how this happens in a little bit, but this ends up coming full circle. And you end up getting to do these things under a different title effectively. And you get to test the same kind of thing in the field in the scariest of ways and pass the tests with flying colors, which I think is cathartic for you. However, in the short term, at this point, before any of that happens, I can only go off what you wrote here, but it would seem to me that minus, some regular human flaw, people on the board don't like you and relationships and stuff like that, this was a situation where they probably looked at you. They probably looked at all the other stuff you did at the farm, and you probably had very high grades. They looked at you physically and said, this dude can pass as every race known to man, including, like, if I pulled your eyeballs a little bit, Asian. Like, you could do literally anything. Like, you got a lot of the right emotions, the anxieties, all of it. Like, you're like almost an IVF test tube, like, genetic baby of what they would look for in a case officer. But there's one thing that's a problem, and that is you had a high probability of being a star on that wall. Because you
didn't follow orders.
You were a cowboy. And when you wanted to do something, you would do it and just go 1,000 miles an hour. And it cost you on the last drill, and they're like, well, that might cost them in the field. So in some ways, that could have been it. Do you think that could be an explanation?
I absolutely do, but it took me a long time to come to any explanation where CIA was acting in my best interest.
Right.
Just like every American out there, it's gonna take a minute before you stop to realize that CIA might be acting in your best interest, right? So that was the same thing that I had. The benefit that I had is that I had my wife, who was my girlfriend or fiance very shortly thereafter, was a true believer. She still is a true believer. True believer, right? Where she still looks at CIA and she still feels more like pity than she feels outrage. And she still looks at CIA and she sees more honor than she sees frustration, right? She is very much.
So she doesn't like JFK.
JFK? Oh, I get you now.
Oh, it took a minute.
Yeah. Took a minute. I don't know. My wife.
We're going to have to ask her.
Yeah, you're going to have to ask her. But my point with all that is just she planted that seed and she kind of kept trying to fertilize it for a long time. Like they did you a favor. Especially when we found out what my assignment would have been had I graduated. If I would have graduated and certified, they would have sent me immediately to a war zone, to your exact point. And then because they didn't, I ended up getting sent into Africa instead. Because as silly as this is, Africa is where you send all your trouble children. Because nobody cares about what happens in Africa. There's not a lot of money in Africa. No matter how much you screw up, you can't really make a big splash in most of Africa, right? They're not going to send me to the sweet places in Nigeria. They'll send me to some shithole place somewhere else. So I end up supporting, just like to your exact point, he's got all the makings, he's got all the physical attributes, he's got the scores, he understands the skills. He's just not a case officer. Well, once you're not among case officers, all of a sudden having all the same skills as a case officer without the title becomes a big advantage.
So they put you at SOO. So can you explain, because the way I think a lot of this had to get skipped over in the book because you had to get to the gist of the story.
Correct.
So let's get to some of the things that aren't in the book here. When you become an SOO, the way you described it, this was one of those buckets you talked about a few minutes ago. It's like you are all the mission support. You very often are working from Langley and you're working with all the case officers in the field, and you don't go into the field a lot. But you ended up coming up with some ideas that then led to them being like, oh, yeah, put this dude in the field. And that doesn't happen often for
It doesn't
SOOs?
happen often, correct. So a SOO is called a Staff Operations Officer. So the official term for case officer is actually called Operations Officer, OO. Case officer is really just the more common term outside of CIA. Inside of CIA, you're called an ops officer, OO. A staff operations officer is essentially the staff support to operations officers. You're supposed to know everything that they know, understand their needs, and then essentially look around corners to make sure they get what they need before they ask for it. So you're getting them money before they ask for it. You're getting them alias stocks before they ask for it. You're anticipating all of their needs because you know what they're going to need, but you're not a direct competitor career-wise because you're not out there doing the job. So they make me a staff operations officer because the board, the staff operations officer board, different than the case officer board, the SUE board understood that I was a shoo-in for a staff operations officer. I could speak the lingo. All of the next generation of case officers were coming out of my class, so they already knew that I was going to know more than half of them. So they're like, this guy is a shoo-in. Let's just set him up there. And I did a good job because they were from my class. They knew I was good at what I did. They listened to me. I trusted them. I wanted to keep them safe. I only hated the leadership. I didn't have any problem with the men and women who were out there doing the job. So I poured myself into helping them and kind of pissing off everybody who was a leadership above me. And one of the things that people don't know about CIA is there's often pressure back and forth between what people want and need in the field and what headquarters wants to give them. The field needs money. Headquarters doesn't want to give you money. They want to retain their money so they can make what if somebody else needs it later on. Right. They need new docs. Well, how are we going to get you those docs? And what's the logistical headache and blah, 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 blah. So there's this weird sort of push and pull. There's like a conflict between the field and headquarters all the time. And I was sitting on the headquarters side supporting the field. So anybody who worked with me didn't have that pressure because I would fight that fight for them. That made me a well-liked SUE in the field, but not well-liked at headquarters. And I didn't really care for a long time. So I had success because I would make sure that my case officers got what they needed. That success in the field speaks more than your reputation at Langley for a few years. So I ended up having a lot of operations that came my way where I got to exercise my skills and exercise my knowledge and exercise my relationships across human trafficking, counterproliferation, counterterrorism, money smuggling, like all the bad shit. But I never got to do anything that was high profile or high threat because leadership couldn't trust me. On the other side of this, my wife is doing the exact opposite. She's getting all the high profile, all the high sensitive operations that a targeter can get because the leadership trusted her through and through. And targeters were carved out so they really couldn't talk directly to the case officer. So they would send dossiers and they would send targeting packages, and leaders would decide whether targeting packages are kinetically acted upon or targets of intelligence. And then the case officer would be told what to do from there. But the targeter was cut out of it. So she had this dream job for her of living in a skiff, in a larger skiff, in a larger skiff, in a contained building, and never being bothered, right? Outside of people.
She's got to form patterns all day.
All day. Find patterns, form patterns, and push information out. And she loved it.
And that was a job that was really, I don't know if the right word is invented, but it metamorphosized post 9/11.
Correct. Before 9/11, it didn't really exist.
You know, minus the technology that we have now, or even then that we didn't have pre 9/11, why wouldn't a job like that, which is basically, to put it at a high level, and correct me if I'm wrong here, it's like taking a lot of data and making sense of it. Why wouldn't that exist? Like, why didn't that exist pre 9/11?
Because it's very expensive. Hiring a person whose job is just to create 25-page targeting packages like they do in the movies, right? Here's the person's favorite drink. Here's where they hang out. Here's where they went to college. Here's their second roommate and what their roommate did. Like, those packages prior to 9/11 were unnecessary. They're very, very expensive. They're very slow. And then even though you might build a package on a person, that's not the same thing as having somebody successfully recruit the person. It just gives them a benefit for the first meeting. After 9/11, Congress came in and basically said, hey, CIA and FBI, you guys fucked up. We're going to create the DNI. We're going to flood the DNI with money. And the DNI's responsibility is to staff you guys up to like 300% your current size. Well, now they're flush with money, flush with billets to hire people. And this idea that was an idea for the previous director, hey, let's create these operational support professions. All of a sudden that idea took off and got funded. So now professional targeters didn't ever exist. They were something that kind of accidentally happened. Well, now my wife became one of the first professionally cultivated targeters, and they've gone on to be very successful since because CI continues to be well-funded until what I've most recently read about Tulsi Gabbard, but they continue to be pretty well-funded, and it became worth it because the success rate when a case officer targets a target with a targeting package, the success rate is it's multiple echelons higher than when they just wing it and go shake hands at a diplomatic event.
All right, so we'll get into some good examples of how Jihi was able to leverage her targeting expertise to help the sellout here. But in the meantime, when you were saying you became SOO and they sent you to like kind of support a lot of African missions and stuff like that, what was the context of the first time, without going into exact details, where they said, all right, you got to actually come here. You're not going to be at the desk. You're coming here and going undercover and doing something.
So there's a culture at CIA where everybody hates being at Langley. And it's true. It's a very real culture. If you're at headquarters, you're kind of second class. You're a second class citizen. You don't know what it's like to be in the field. You don't know the realities of the field. You can't keep up with the tempo in the field. So you're second class. And the real tip of the spear is in the field. So because of that culture, the men and women who operate in the field always have this Benny, this reward they can give you, which is basically called a TDY, a temporary duty yonder. They'll invite you to come be part of the field operation. And even if all you do is come out to the field and sit in an office for 5 days, you get to not be a second-class citizen for that week. And as you build up those TDYs, your actual career category sees you differently, because every day that you spend in the field counts towards an early retirement. So if you get enough days in the field, you can actually qualify to retire 10 years earlier than anybody else. Right? It's not, you don't need 10 years of time in the field. You need 2 years of time in the field. So if you can get 2 years of time in the field, you can retire 10 years earlier than anybody else at the same rate. So everybody takes these TDYs. Everybody wants them. Everybody loves them. I didn't really want to go on TDY because I was never going to retire from that fucking place. I just wanted to be with my fiance, the girl who gets me, the girl who's a rock star, the girl who's cool, and everything else I was doing was just so that I could be with her. The field starts requesting me to come out to the field. My wife, my fiance, of course, at the time, is encouraging me to go. She's like, you got to go. Like, you got to go. Just show your face. It's going to be good for your career. They like you. They want you there. And don't forget that the people that you're helping in the field today will become the leaders of tomorrow, and they will decide your future then. Again, she's wise. It makes sense. So that's when I started going out. And sometimes I would go out and I would do nothing. I would just sit around in the office. Sometimes I would go out and I would procure a cell phone or a SIM card or like drop money somewhere. Like I would do little things that I could do because of my training at the farm, but I wasn't qualified to ever recruit an asset. That's what a case officer, an operations officer is technically certified to do, is to say, hey, why don't you work for us? And in exchange for you giving us secrets, we'll give you whatever, Johnny Walker Green Label or cash or whatever else. That's the only thing I couldn't do according to the certification rules. So every time I went out in the field, they liked me, they wanted to reward me, and they loved the fact that I would go do the shit jobs that no case officer wants to do. No case officer wants to run a 90-minute SDR to buy a cell phone and then another hour-long SDR to come back just so that they can have an extra cell phone that's off the record. But when I go out into the field, I can do that shit all day.
Surveillance detection route you're talking about?
Correct. So there was, every time I went out, people loved having me there. Every time I went out, I got to meet cool people. I had more fun than I expected I would have, and that built up over the first 2 years of my career.
Okay. So you're working primarily across Africa. When you get called, well, before I get there, was there a part of you? It seems like you and Jihi have like an amazing relationship and everything, and actually have strongly support each other's careers. It's clear like her advice to you and how to handle some of these situations was you took it and trusted it and it worked out, and like you encouraged her to continue being a rock star and all that. But like as a human being, was there ever a part of you that felt like you during this time period like you were a second fiddle
to her?
Yep.
Yes, but it was a comfort. It was a comfort because I didn't have, my ego was crashed. I didn't look at myself and see myself accurately. I looked at myself and saw myself kind of victimized. But at the same time, I was like, this is easy. This is easy work. I don't have to do more than 8 hours a day. I don't really have to stress out about bringing work home. Like she would work 12, 14 hours a day sometimes because she cared so much.
Yeah.
I didn't care that much. I was like, fuck it. I'm going to go hit the gym. I'm going to go get us some takeout Thai food. And by the time you get home, I'll feed you. We'll watch a movie. We'll bang it out. We'll go to bed. Like, it's a good deal for me. And that was how I viewed life kind of day to day. And just like most 27, 28-year-olds, I didn't really have a clear vision of the future. I was like, this is pretty good. We'll keep doing this. And it's not getting worse. Might as well keep doing this. And one day an opportunity will present itself, and one day we'll figure it out. And you always have this question of what's the next assignment. Every 2 to 4 years, you can get reassigned. And my wife was getting reassigned like every year, year and a half. So she was climbing the ladder quick. So I was like, anything could happen in the next 2 years. So let's wait and see what happens. Maybe we go to France. Maybe we go to Rio de Janeiro. Maybe we go to, New Zealand and live there for a next tour. Who knows? Who knows where we're going to go? But let's go. So second fiddle was a very convenient place to be. You didn't have to practice as much as first fiddle.
And you still had it in your mind, if I heard you correctly a few minutes ago, that like you would just work there forever?
Well, not forever. I never thought it would be forever, but there was nothing better I could do right then. So what I always thought would happen, what I always was kind of talking to Jihi about, was that she would get some sweet assignment overseas, and I would quit officially, follow her, and then become an English teacher wherever we went. And then she would spend however long she was going to spend there while I'm building our local network as an English speaker, not an Intel network, but an actual professional network. And then she could quit. And then we could just live wherever we want to live. And we had our favorites. Like we knew like South Korea is a great place to be an English teacher. So we were like, oh, maybe we'll go to South Korea. Nigeria is a great place to be an English teacher. Croatia is a great place to be an English teacher.
Croatia's sick.
So we were like, if we get one of these assignments, then I'll become an English teacher and I'll build our escape plan for 2 years. And that was always something she was willing to entertain.
So how did Falcon come up? Falcon is the country you refer to in this very red book about a country with very high GDP. Your words, not mine, in Asia. How'd you get pulled in there?
So there's a multiple kind of answers to that. So as people read the book, they'll discover partly we were pulled into a conversation with leadership because they wanted to create a new way of handling operations. They wanted to find a new way to collect information. The reason they wanted to collect information a different way was because what the world didn't know is that CIA had a mole. So there was a mole in their midst in a leadership level position who
in that specific part, like in
that specific part in the area that controlled Falcon.
Yep.
Which is a very sensitive area. It's so sensitive, it's got its own office called Falcon House inside CIA. The most sensitive areas are all houses. They have their own house.
Is it actually codenamed Falcon House, or didn't you change? I was going to say, you changed even the name of the code name, right?
Correct. So every synonym, every cryptonym that we have in the book is different than the cryptonym that we have in real life to further kind of insulate against anybody using it. But Falcon House had a problem. They needed a new way of creating operations. So they called us in and they said, hey, lucky you guys, you're going to go create new operations for us. What we didn't realize is that we were going to go create new operations because they had a mole and they were trying to use us to flush the mole out. Because if we started creating new operations, the mole would want access to our operations. And then that would make the mole make some kind of mistake that they would be able to catch, snare, and use as part of a case.
And this is just one mole that you guys knew existed, but hypothetically, there's other moles in other, not even just here, but in other types of houses that exist at all times that you don't even know about.
Absolutely. We have a rule of thumb at CIA that every time you find one mole, you have to assume that there's 4 others. So that there's 5 at any given time. And that's what kind of inspires us to keep up the hunt. Always be looking over your shoulder, always be speculative, always be suspicious, always be thinking that if you found one, that's proof there's more.
But you can't ever trust anyone doing that. Anyone to your left or right, whether they've been in gunfights with you or not. You have to assume anyone, including the people around you, have to assume you could be a mole for somebody.
And that's the culture at CIA. You don't trust anyone. You don't trust anyone to back your career up. You don't trust anyone to back you up in the field. You don't trust anyone not to be a double agent. You are always kind of watching and thinking, what have they done most recently? Is there a change in their behavior? What could explain the change that I see? But you're always suspicious. And even at the end of all of this effort, just like you were saying earlier, one of our closest friends was skeptical of us
For trying to leave CIA.
for trying to leave CIA.
Well, apparently you're not allowed to do that.
That CIA
That's probably why.
didn't know how to do it for sure.
It's like, wait a minute, no one leaves here.
So we get called in by leadership, and they say, we want you to build a new type of operation. And
You were called in separately, right? So you didn't know Jihi was being called in at the same time?
Right. We were called in separately based on the leadership that we had at the time. And then after we both got called in, we went back home and we were like, or basically over a phone call. And we found out that we had both had the same conversation at almost the same time by our two different supervisors.
Now, even though you both work for CIA, you felt that wasn't something that is classified specifically for either of you to share that?
Because the need to know is defined by the operational area. So when we were briefed and said, hey, we want to bring you to Falcon House, that's not classified information about Falcon House. So we can go back to each other and say, I just got offered a job at Falcon House, because we're not divulging anything sensitive to each other. Mm-hmm. What we didn't expect is that we were both going to go back and have been offered jobs at the same time. So then we got to have a conversation where we were like, hey, Falcon House knows they're approaching both of us, and Falcon House knows that we're engaged, and Falcon House knows that this is the date of our wedding, because we've had to clear all this stuff with the entire CIA. So they're not stupid. Why are they doing this? Why are they bringing us both in? And more importantly, why are they bringing me in as a dumbass? It makes sense why they'd hire my wife, because she's shit hot. But why would they bring in me? I've never done sensitive operations. I was never deemed qualified for that. And I've had success in the shitholes of the world. Wouldn't it make sense to keep me in the shitholes of the world?
Does this change your title too, technically, when you do that? So you're not an SOO anymore?
No, it kind of cements the title, because the positions that are created are positions defined by title. So what Falcon House did is they basically created a whole new title, a whole new operation that was staffed with a SOO and staffed with a targeter.
So where did they call you from? Like, take me there that day, where they're like, you got to show up over here to this thing.
So every office, CIA has 2 buildings. Each building has, I think, 7 floors. There might only be 6 floors in the new headquarters building, not counting basement floors.
Al-Qaeda might be watching this, bro. Come on.
Well, they can also see that on Google Maps. But there's 2 buildings and there's multiple floors. And depending on where you're assigned geographically, you sit in a different floor in a different part of the different buildings. We communicate with each other all day through a encrypted messaging system that lives on our computers. It's not that different from like WhatsApp or Signal. It's just on your computer. And then you communicate all day to anybody who is on the same index for CIA as you are. So if you need to talk to somebody in a different office, you just look up their name and you talk to them. It's no problem. But that's also how we get most of our alerts. We have emails, and emails are official correspondence, but messages are how we tell each other where to go. So about the same time as Jihi, I get a message on my instant messenger device tool that says, hey, you've been scheduled for an appointment with our group chief, which is on the same floor in the same office, just the bigger office down the hallway at whatever, 2:00 in the afternoon. I don't remember the time. So I'm just doing my shit, writing my cables, doing my research, doing whatever I got to do, probably trying to stay awake at 1:00 in the afternoon when I get this message. And I'm like, oh, I don't think anything good's going to come of it, because there's no reason that the group chief should want to talk to me. There's like 4 people between him and me that he should want to talk to. But I get the message at 2:00. I'm outside of his office. I probably wait 15 or 20 minutes because he's not going to talk to me right away, because they're dicks that way. But then I go in, I have the conversation, and he explains the intention. He explains, hey, we're going to move you to Falcon House. So you have to tell us you have 48 hours to decide whether or not you're going to take a Falcon House assignment. They think that you'd be a good fit for something over there.
What was your first thought when you heard that? Because
it's a mistake.
Leagues.
Yeah. It's a mistake. I was like,
you're like the Drewski meme?
I was like, yeah.
Who? Me?
At first I was like, you guys, I think you're looking for somebody else, but I mean, I'll think about it. And then the second thought I had after they made a mistake, the second thought was, it's just something stupid. They must need some courier to run like casino chips from one place to another place. It's probably something stupid, right? It's not the big leagues. It's the smallest thing that you could do for a major league team. They need someone to
You're the hot dog vendor.
Yeah, someone needs to hand dry the fucking cups. I don't know what it is.
When did that change?
When I talked to Jihi, and she had the same conversation. We got called in together a few days later when we accepted the operation. We got called in, and then they gave us more context.
And what did they tell you then?
That was when they told us that they want the two of us to create a new way of operating, and they wanted us to do it because we had a Sioux background and we had a targeting background, and we were actually legally married, and our cover identities were legally entwined with one another. So it made us kind of a unique pair to go out and build this operation. And they've told us that they wanted us to have a blank check for the operation that was still going to fall under approvals for spending, but they trusted that we could do it. It was very clear in that conversation that they trusted Jihi to be responsible, and they trusted me to keep Jihi safe. That was basically how I put it all together. It's like, oh, so you guys, you're going to send us somewhere, and it's a posh somewhere. We didn't go somewhere harsh, right? When they assigned us to our third country location, when they assigned us to Wolf, what we codename Wolf in the book, Wolf is not a hardship place. It's a pretty comfortable place to be, but it's not necessarily safe. So it was really clear to me, Jihi was supposed to be the superstar, and I was supposed to just help her.
Yeah, did you like do that consciously where you named the safe country like something bad and then the bad country like something kind of cool?
So here's the funny story. We had named everything the real country names at first, and then it was classified. And then as part of the negotiation to try to reach a common ground, they let us encrypt everything. So we encrypted stuff with really obscure names. I think we were using like flowers and trees, right? Really obscure names. And then CIA came back and they were like, we don't like your encryptions.
They're like, that's kind of gay.
They were like, we don't like your encryptions. We want you to change your encryptions. And we were like, what the fuck do you want us to change them to? And they were like, we want you to use North American predators for all of your cryptonyms.
Oh, okay. I mean, a falcon is a predator, but I'm not worried about a falcon attacking me. I am worried about a wolf attacking me. A falcon's like kind of cool if I see it. Like I think Theo Vaughn owns falcons. He seems like a nice guy, right? Like, so you name the safe country Wolf and the not safe country Falcon. Again, like what's the logic?
There's no logic there. We just named them North American animals. And we didn't know if CIA was going to approve the book or not. And they didn't. But we never had them. They never argued with us about the different names. I think Badger is in there.
Yeah, Badger was hard. I like that. That was good. Okay, so you guys, what year are we in? Like 2010 at this point?
We're actually not allowed to disclose the specific years, but we're mid-career for me.
Okay. So I'm going to say it's somewhere around 2010, somewhere in that area, whatever. But you get sent over there. Again, this isn't going to be one where you're back at Langley. You are sent over there, and they've told you there's a mole. It's here, like where we're sitting, someone high up, we don't know where. And your job is to be able to manage things on the ground, set up something on the ground that involves, undercover work to try to root this out and also acquire intelligence on Falcon. So what you guys set up here is really amazing with this whole cell concept. And rather than me try to explain it, can you just tell me how that even came up? Like where you and Jihi were, where suddenly it was like, oh, Eureka, we got it.
Yeah. So we were in Wolf. We had already arrived in Wolf, and we didn't get much of a warm greeting from anybody because we were outsiders coming into their location. And of course, it's a posh location. It's a great location. Everybody has a friend that they're trying to get hooked up with Wolf. And here we walk in, 2 second tour officers, 29-ish years old, like whatever. And we're jokes. So we walk in and we introduce ourselves and we tell them what we're there for. We're here to create new operations, but we're not case officers. So guess what we need? We need case officers. And all the case officers that are there at Wolf are supposed to be doing stuff for Wolf. So all of the leadership at Wolf was like, fuck you guys. You can't take our case officers off of our tasks to bring them into your fantasy.
It's kind of weird that CIA would just like kind of send you, and no pun intended, into like the wolf's den here and be like, yeah, just, talk with people there, figure it out, like make a team. And they're looking at you. They're like, you guys aren't case officers. Like you're in a different lane anyway. So What does that lane have to do with us?
And you would think that that's silly, but that's actually how a lot of CIA works. Like the left hand doesn't talk to the right hand. Remember how we were talking about the conflict between headquarters and the field? Yep. To headquarters, it makes sense. We're headquarters. We're sending you to the field to do this important thing. The field is going to follow our orders. And then you get to the field, and the field's like, headquarters has got their head up their ass. We're not helping you. So we get there, and we can't get support from leadership. So my wife starts doing everything she can to support local wolf operations, to build a good reputation there. She's anti-conflict and she's anti-confrontation, and she's got anxiety anyways, which we talk about in the book. So it's a very easy way for her to kind of integrate, because she doesn't fight anybody.
She's just allowed to do that, join some of the active missions there because she got sent there.
And she's a targeter, and a targeter is something everybody wants.
Right.
So it's like a Thneed, right? If you read Dr. Seuss, but everybody wants her, so everybody's giving her assignments, and she's finding what they need, and she's a superstar at what she does. So she's having this excellent success, and she's winning this excellent reputation. Meanwhile, I'm sitting there and I'm just kind of like, well, what can I do? What can I do? And one middle-ranking case officer, a guy named James in the book.
Yep.
James finds out about us, and James actually has experience working against Falcon. He's the only one in all of Wolf that has experience working against Falcon. And he starts to talk to us about why we're there. And we explain, hey, Falcon House picked us up, and we're out here to build new operations against Falcon. And he's like, that's pretty cool. And then he tells us some of his experience working against Falcon. And he's like, the hardest part is the bureaucracy. You got to go through 5 lanes of approval before you fucking talk to a guy.
Thank you guys for checking out this clip. If you haven't already subscribed, please subscribe and hit the like button on this video. It is a huge, huge help. And if you'd like to check out this clip's full podcast episode, that link is in the description below or right here. And finally, you can follow me on Instagram and X by using the links in my description below.